In the days and weeks leading up to the attack at the Galactic Council, Ambassador Varro was kept in the loop by the Veritin intelligence branch of the military. Within the cryptic shadows of Veritin's central intelligence hub, streams of data flowed from his network of clandestine agents, sketching a concerning picture of human subterfuge. These regular reports, painting an alarming image of human meddling, came not just from Veritan spies, but also from a handful of species within the Galactic Council. These races, bound to humanity through mutual interests, had begun to voice their disquiet. Doubts about the nature of their alliance had led them to leak critical information, casting the humans in an ever-growing shadow of treachery. Varro's concern heightened with every piece of analysis shared by the Veritin intelligence chiefs. They had dissected the humans' actions and discovered an insidious plot, a malevolent design aimed at inflaming Veritin radicals. The humans, it appeared, intended to spark a conflict within Veritin society, destabilizing them from within. The incident in the Galactic Council was no random act of extremism, it was a manipulation, a puppet show choreographed by the humans. The weight of this understanding fell heavily on Varro. He replayed his last conversation with Solane, recalling his cryptic warning, "Your people set it into motion." Solane's acknowledgement of the impending Veritin trap served as a chilling admission of his role in the deception. With his heart pounding, Varro was painfully aware that the risks had multiplied, and his people's future was teetering on the brink. He was now entangled in a high-stakes game, facing not just human cunning, but also duplicity from within the Galactic Council. Solane stood on the bridge of the Resurgence, staring at the hollow feed showing the vast debris field of the destroyed Veritin ship. He wore a solemn expression, his heart feigning a rhythmic ache of empathy. "We extend our deepest sympathies to our Veritin allies," he spoke into the interstellar channel. "We stand ready to offer any assistance necessary in this difficult time." Across the vast expanse of the cosmos, on the Veritin home world, Ambassador Varro watched Solane's address with icy eyes. He stood rigid in the command center, the holographic image of Solane projected onto the room casting an eerie glow. His jaw clenched as Solane offered condolences and aid. It was all too convenient, too opportune. The humans' offers of help were quick to come, suspiciously so. A few days later, the Galactic Council assembled for a special session. The atmosphere was tense, each representative carrying the weight of the recent catastrophe. Solane, the human ambassador, walked in confidently, the picture of diplomatic grace. Yet, underneath the facade, he was a chess player ready to make his move. Varro, the Veritin representative, was also present. He bore the heavy burden of his people's loss, and his gaze never strayed far from Solane. Each word spoken, each expression exchanged, only fueled his burning desire for retribution. His heart seethed with betrayal, his veins pulsed with a fervor for vengeance. As the session commenced, the rising hostility was palpable. Solane's eloquent speech masked his people's hidden intentions, speaking of peace, unity, and cooperation. The Veritans, however, saw through this charade. They were not the instigators of war, as the humans painted them to be, and their recent actions were taken out of a need for self-preservation. The meeting moved into its critical phase, the council members engaged in a fervent debate over the crisis. Varro's mind, however, was elsewhere. He could feel the scornful glances, hear the whispered allegations, the Veritans becoming scapegoats for a crisis they didn't instigate. Despite his position and authority, Varro felt helpless. His people were being accused, and the evidence against the humans was circumstantial at best. The stage was set, the players in place, and the Galactic Council watched on, blind to the dangerous game being played. Varro retreated to his quarters after the meeting, the weight of the day's events heavy on his mind. His reflection stared back at him from the metallic surface of his desk, a beacon of hope for his people amidst the rising tide of accusations. As the last echoes of the council's debate faded away, Varro's sense of betrayal grew stronger. He was not a man driven by hatred, but he was also no fool. He had seen the dark undercurrents of the humans' diplomatic front, the veiled threats and cunning manipulation. His people were being cornered, and he knew he had to act. But how? In the end, Varro found himself standing at the crossroads of diplomacy and revenge. The once clear boundaries between friend and foe were now blurred, and his next move could either save his people or plunge them into a devastating war. This was the dilemma that kept him awake at night, the question that haunted his every thought. As the first part of this chapter came to an end, the tension between the Veritans and the humans had escalated to dangerous heights. A silent storm was brewing, and the Galactic Council was caught in the middle, oblivious to the catastrophic storm that was about to break. Varro was left alone in his quarters, his mind buzzing with strategic plans and possibilities, while his heart yearned for justice. His people were counting on him, and he would not let them down. Varro stood in front of the massive windows of the Veritin command center, gazing out into the sprawling space landscape. In the light of recent events, he felt a growing sense of unease, an uneasy anticipation of what was to come. Despite the bitter accusations, the Veritans had to tread carefully. They were in the Galactic Council's crosshairs, and any wrong move could lead to their expulsion. The human offer of assistance, though seemingly generous, only fueled Varro's suspicion. It was as if they were setting a trap, luring the Veritans into accepting their help only to twist the narrative later. Every instinct told him it was a ruse, a cleverly veiled ploy. Yet, there was no solid evidence, and without it, any counter-accusation would appear as an attempt to shift the blame. Back at the Galactic Council, the discussions were reaching a fever pitch. The humans, seemingly undeterred by the mounting tension, made a bold move. Solane, with an air of unflappable calm, suggested a military resolution. The human forces, he proposed, could lead a joint investigation into the Veritin ship explosion, offering their technological prowess and strategic expertise. The proposal was met with a chorus of mixed reactions. Some members of the council viewed it as a proactive move, a chance for the humans to prove their commitment to peace and justice. Others, however, saw it as an aggressive overture, a thinly veiled attempt to assert their dominance. As the news of the proposal spread, Varro's heart sank. It was a masterstroke, a move designed to paint the humans as the peacekeepers while placing the Veritans under further scrutiny. With the Galactic Council watching, he could not openly retaliate without jeopardizing his people's standing. In the privacy of his office, Varro's usual stoic demeanor gave way to a storm of emotions. His fists clenched, and his mind seethed with fury. The humans were exploiting the situation, playing their cards with unnerving precision. The sense of helplessness was unbearable, but Varro knew he had to maintain control. His mind raced, exploring strategies and outcomes. He could see the precipice they were being pushed towards, an all-out war. But it was a path he hoped to avoid. Not out of fear, but because he understood the astronomical cost such a conflict would demand. He was a Veritin, a race known for their wisdom and foresight. He would not be goaded into a hasty response. As the chapter drew to a close, the state of intergalactic relations hung by a thread. The humans had effectively turned the tables, placing the Veritans in the proverbial hot seat. The whispers of a potential conflict were growing louder, the shadow of war looming ominously on the horizon. Varro was left alone with his thoughts, the burden of his people's fate resting on his weary shoulders. The situation had reached a critical juncture, and his next move would inevitably shape the course of the Galactic Council's history. And while the odds seemed stacked against him, Varro was determined to fight till the end. Meanwhile, Solane looked out of the Resurgence's bridge, his expression unreadable. The Galactic Council was buzzing with his proposal, the next moves were being calculated, and the board was set. The tension was palpable, the stakes higher than ever. It was clear that the humans were not just players anymore, they were becoming the puppet masters, and the galaxy was their stage. The air in the Galactic Council chamber was thick with tension, much like the charged atmosphere before a storm. High-ranking officials and dignitaries from numerous worlds sat in anticipation, their various eyes, antennae, or whatever sensory organs they possessed, trained on one figure, Solane, the human ambassador. Varro, his Veritin counterpart, sat at the opposing end of the chamber, his gaze fixed on the human. His eyes, normally calm and unreadable, simmered with a quiet rage, barely kept in check by the diplomatic veneer he had meticulously cultivated over the years. His mind, however, was a whirlpool of thoughts and emotions, his desire for retribution clashing against the political restraints of his position. Despite his thirst for vengeance, Varro knew he was in a precarious situation. The Veritans' place within the Galactic Council hung in the balance, their reputation tarnished by recent events. An open act of aggression against the humans, especially without substantial proof of their guilt, could lead to their expulsion. A diplomatic solution was the only feasible course of action. Solane, completely aware of the charged atmosphere and his adversary's glaring gaze, rose to address the assembly, projecting an aura of calm composure. His voice resonated through the silence, weaving a narrative that expertly danced on the fine line between insinuation and accusation. In light of the recent events and escalating tensions, the Human Federation believes that it is incumbent upon us to ensure the safety and stability of Galactic Council territories, he began, his gaze sweeping across the attentive faces. He paused for effect, letting his words sink in. The room remained deathly quiet, every word carrying the weight of potential war or uneasy peace. We propose a military resolution. The Galactic Council should permit the Human Federation to station our forces at strategic locations around Veritin territories, Solane continued, his tone steady and composed. A ripple of surprise and shock ran through the assembly. The audacity of the suggestion was breathtaking. Solane, however, did not falter, confidently maintaining eye contact with the other ambassadors. This is not an act of aggression, but rather a protective measure. Our presence will act as a buffer and peacekeeping force, deterring any potential acts of aggression. The room erupted into a cacophony of hushed whispers, indignant protests, and surprised exclamations. Some council members nodded in agreement, appreciating the logic behind the seemingly preposterous proposal. Others, especially those who had long-standing ties with the Veritans, immediately recognized it as a veiled threat. Varro's gaze remained locked on Solane, his insides churning with a turbulent mix of anger, surprise, and grudging admiration. The human had played his cards well, spinning a narrative that not only defended his race, but also placed them in a position of potential power. This chapter ends on a cliffhanger, leaving the fate of the human proposal and the future of the Veritin race hanging in the balance. Tension is high, with the undercurrents of war starting to ripple through the Galactic Council. The game of interstellar politics is only just beginning, setting the stage for a potential conflict that could ripple across the cosmos. As the whispering crescendo of reactions reached its peak, the room fell into silence once again when the council chairperson, a being of regal poise from the peaceful planet of Keels, called for order. She took in the assortment of representatives, each dealing with the aftershock of Solane's audacious proposition in their own unique way. "We shall discuss this proposal in detail," she stated, her tone brooking no argument. In the cold stillness that followed, Varro could almost hear the cogs of diplomacy grinding against the sands of time. The audacity of the humans, suggesting such a resolution, could not be understated. However, the manner in which it had been done was an art of persuasion in itself. The Veritin ambassadors seethed silently. As much as he wished to lash out, to expose the humans for the snakes he believed they were, he could do little more than tighten his fists under the council table. His political acumen told him that any outburst now would only strengthen the human's position. In contrast, Solane, having delivered his earth-shattering statement, wore an expression of calm self-assurance. The human's placid demeanor, amidst the turbulent sea of political unrest, added to the growing divide between the two ambassadors. The days that followed saw a frenzy of diplomatic negotiations, secret meetings, and tense discussions as the council debated the human's proposal. Some members saw the humans' demand as a necessary step towards ensuring galactic peace. Others considered it a power move, an act of concealed hostility against the Veritans, cleverly packaged as a protective measure. Varro watched it all unfold, his resentment towards the humans growing with each passing moment. His desire for revenge became a gnawing itch in the back of his mind, an insatiable hunger for justice. But he had to be patient, to bide his time until the perfect moment presented itself. As the deliberations continued, the balance of power in the Galactic Council remained precarious, like a cosmic tightrope walker, maintaining a delicate equilibrium. The humans' bold proposal had effectively thrown a spanner into the intricate machinery of intergalactic politics. Its ramifications were beginning to reverberate across the cosmos, shaking the foundations of alliances and stoking the flames of latent animosities. The deliberations in the Galactic Council continued, a war of words replacing the silent tensions that had previously hung heavy in the air. As representatives from each member state voiced their arguments and counterarguments, a new development arose that threatened to shift the narrative once again. In the far reaches of Veritin territory, a salvage team was conducting a painstakingly slow and meticulous search of the debris field from the destroyed Veritin ship. It was a grim task, made even more difficult by the stark reality of what had transpired. Each piece of wreckage was a somber reminder of the lives lost and a grim testament to the escalating tensions. On the third day of their search, they found something. Buried beneath layers of twisted metal and scorched debris was a small, unassuming object. It was a stark contrast to its surroundings, its surface clean and smooth. It was the ship's black box, a buoy designed to survive even the most catastrophic of events. The box was quickly transported back to Veritin home world, where it was received with a mixture of anticipation and dread. This little device held the answers to the many questions that had haunted the Veritans since the incident. It held the truth. As the recorder's stored information was cautiously extracted and decoded, a narrative began to take shape. Initial data painted an unsettling picture. The explosion wasn't an unforeseen accident or a result of equipment malfunction. Rather, it was initiated by an external entity, a clear act of sabotage. Intriguingly, the recorder contained misaligned sensor readings that traced back to the time when an unidentified object, likely the explosive, was affixed to the ship's hull. In addition, the recorder detected a mysterious, anomalous surge of energy outside the ship just before the calamitous explosion. As this revelation dawned upon the Veritans, the air seemed to leave the room. The implications were severe and immediate. If proven, this could tip the scales in their favor in the ongoing deliberations. However, it also meant acknowledging a horrifying reality: they had been attacked, and war could be imminent. Ambassador Varro received this news with a stoic calmness that belied the storm raging inside him. As he stared at the data, his mind raced with possibilities, scenarios, and most importantly, strategies. This was the evidence they needed to expose the humans, but he had to act carefully. The chapter ended with the Veritans holding onto a potential game-changer, the black box from the destroyed ship. The tension had escalated, the stakes had risen, and the weight of the truth bore heavy on their hearts. As the Galactic Council continued their deliberations, a new player had entered the board, undeniable evidence of foul play. The stage was set for an even more explosive reveal, and the galaxy held its breath.